Hello there, my name is Michael Maynard and welcome back to Gorilla Picking. Now, what we are going to do today here, folks, is the first in what is going to be about a dozen occasional videos, part of a series I'm going to call the Mul-T-Lock Masterclass. Now, I love picking multi-locks. In my mind, they are the best and the most challenging of all the mechanical locks. And let's face it, they are very, very complex locks to master. But once you've got it figured out, they are great fun. And once you've got the principles, you really will be able to get into things that nobody else can get into. However, there are occasional multi-locks that you just cannot get into for love nor money. Now, if you've been picking multi-locks for a while, and if you've got reasonably good at it, then by and large, you, with a bit of messing about, you can get into every multi-lock you try, or at least you should. But every now and again you strike one where you just go round and round in circles, you can't get into the thing and you don't know why. Well, I'm here to tell you, folks, the reason that that happens is that you are having trouble with the bitting. In particular, you are having trouble setting an inner that is up inside its outer, and we'll draw you some pictures later on to show you this. And the issue is that the tools that you have got, the dimple flag or the half diamond or whatever you're using, physically is not possible of reaching up inside that outer pin to set the inner one. Now, I want to give you a good example of this. This is an MT5. And I had this MT5 sitting around for ages before I was able to pick it. Now, the MT5 is actually a very easy lock to pick. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise, okay, guys? MT5s are actually a bit of a doddle. But this one had me beat, and it had me beat because of the bitting on pins 1 and 2. Now, let me just grab a pick here. This will do. Okay, so if I can zoom in as far as this thing will go and still keep focus, what you will see here is that in pins 1 and 2 here, the outer pin sets very low, so we have got a deep cut in the key there. Same thing on that one, although not so much. So 1 definitely sets deeper than 2 does, but the inner pins in both cases sit up inside there. Now, that is our problem, and what I am going to do now, folks, I am going to switch off the camera and grab a piece of paper and show you how this works. Back in a second. Righto, guys, so here's our keyway. We're looking straight into the keyway. Now, let's just say we have a pin, an outer, that sets down here, very close to the bottom. So here is the edge of the keyway here. If we're looking in straight in, then we've got the shaft of our flag here, and the flag itself goes up in that direction. So we're rotating up to pick. Now, let's say that we have an inner that sets up inside by quite a long way. So here's our inner that wants to sit like that. Now, what happens here is that we physically can't get onto this thing to push it high enough. Now, when it is in the unset position, when it's binding, it's going to be a lot lower, and we're going to be able to feel it, all right? So this is how it is when it wants to be set, but it's actually going to start off down here like that, and we are going to be able to push this up a certain way. But once we get to the point where this contacts the outer pin, at that point we are stuffed because we just cannot get the thing up any further. Now, the distances that we're talking about here, guys, are minimal, and you'll have heard me raving on about the tolerances in multi-locks before. That's for a reason, okay? The tolerances in multi-locks are incredible. thousandths of an inch count when you're picking a multi-lock. So the size of the flags that you use, and again we're going to look at some of those in a second as well, but the size of the flags that you use are crucial, as are the lengths of the pins. Now this is the pinning specifications for classics and interactives, okay? And the worst possible situation we can have is a D key pin, so a D outer, the longest one, which is 6.65 mils. Now there are max specifications for multi-locks, not for between chambers, okay, but within chambers. So if you have a D outer key pin, the longest inner you're allowed is a number 3, and it just so happens that a 3 here is 6.25 mils. So 6.65 minus 6.25 equals 0.4 of a mil. So we are only talking about a gap here, this distance in there. That distance there is only 0.4 of a mil. But believe me, fellas, if you can't get to it, if you haven't got a tool to reach in there, then you are stuffed. Now, there are classically a couple of different ways to fix this problem, and I want to show you what they are. So again, back in 2 seconds. Okay guys, well, let's have a look at the ways that have been devised of dealing with this problem in the past. Now, there are, broadly speaking, 3 different techniques. Technique number 1, and probably the most obvious one really, is to use a curved flag. So let's just zoom out a little bit here. If we know for a fact that our straight flag is just not going to work, okay, how about we design one that does this? And you can rotate it up and get up in the hole and poke that little inner up. Now, in actual fact, it's actually not a bad idea, but the commercial execution of this idea has been shockingly bad. And the first one I want to tell you about is the Suba. You guys will know that I just don't rate the Suba picks at all. I think they are not a great pick for multi-locks. But they've had a stab at it, okay, and so their curved flag looks like that. It's actually very hard to see this, I must say, but there's a couple of issues with that. Number 1, it's just too big and fat and wide and crude. Number 2, it's made of spring steel, so it flexes all over the place and the feedback's rubbish. And number 3, it only comes in a right-handed version. Suba, for reasons that escape me, have got what they think is a very useful pick, and then they only sell it in a right-handed variant, which is just mental. Now, the Spooks picks have had a bit of a stab at the same thing. So here is the pair this time, so they've got that part right. This is the pair of their curved picks, and they call them the tool wave. So we've got the tool wave right and the tool wave left. Now, this is going to be quite embarrassing for Spooks really, but it has to be said. Spooks picks are based on a very cheap Chinese set, and they modify them, okay? Now, honest to God, the quality of the Chinese set isn't actually all that great. And again, I'm just going to zoom out a little bit so I can demonstrate to you something, guys. I told you that when you're picking a multi-lock, thousandths of an inch count, and believe me, they do, all right? Now, unfortunately, the left and right versions of this pick are just 2 different sizes. And sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. So here is the left-handed one, and the width of that from base to apex is about 315, so about 3.15, 3.13 mils. Okay, all right. On the other hand, the right-handed version is about 3.4 roughly, give or take a little bit. Yeah, 338 I think I measured. And that 0.2 of a mil is just an absolutely massive difference. It really is. So even though these are a good idea, because they're based on picks that aren't made that accurately to begin with, unfortunately these don't work terribly well. So the second way of dealing with it is to have, so the first way was a curved flat, right? Okay. Second way you can deal with it is to make yourself a particularly short, stubby little pick. Now this is actually what I've been playing with just recently. It's absolutely dead flat, so it doesn't have a handedness, it's the same both sides. And my idea was to have a very short little pick that I could get up underneath here and sort of get a more acute angle. And unfortunately I found that it didn't really work. There may be a magic length to get this thing that it works, okay, but I haven't managed that yet. So, you know, it's a good theory, but in practice it's actually fairly hard to do. Now the third way, and this tends to be what the home gamers do, what you can actually do is simply bend a paper clip. Now, just really quick and dirty here, guys. If we get a paper clip and we put a bend in it about a mil roughly from the end of the metal, what we have now got is a little tool. Let's just zoom in a little bit. What we have got is a little tool with a little upstand on it that is actually pretty bloody good at poking up these little pins. So to come back out again, you can see that what we're going to do here is just slip this thing in, and here's our 0.4 mil up like that. All right. Now the problem with this, and some guys do use it, all right, it is the crude home game method for doing it. The problem is that it's very, very difficult to locate this tiny little tip of this little bit of wire on the tip of the pin. So what you're trying to do here is basically thread a needle. You're trying to get one little point to line up with one other little point and then apply the right amount of pressure to it. So it's a bloody good idea, and in some folks' hands it does work. I find it too crude and too kind of fluky really to work properly. So what I decided I wanted, guys, and now we get into the meat of it, okay? I decided that I wanted a method to get my bog standard spooks dimple flags to pick where they physically can't go. Now these are the two picks that you see me use all the time, fellas. It's the tool wave right and left, heavily modified, so they're thinned down and they're otherwise messed around with to pick Mul-T-Locks properly. But they are basically the exact same pick with a mirror image of itself, okay? And trust me when I tell you, it isn't physically possible to set this pin with this pick. But what you're going to see me do now, guys, I'm going to pick this MT5 with the impossible bitting, right? I'm going to pick that with this pick, and then we'll talk about how I did it. Back in a second. Okay folks, well we are clamped up and we are ready to go. There's the bitting on this thing. It's not often you're going to see somebody pick an MT5 just to prove a point about bitting, you know, but that's what's going to happen today. So, alright, we've got some anti-clockwise tension on there. We are going to see if the alpha pin is binding. It's not, so we obviously need to pick some outers first. 1-0. 2 I've overset already. Okay, start again. 1-0. 2-0. 3 a click. 4-0. 5-0. Okay, back to the start. 1 feels set now. Okay, so 1 is set basically on the bottom. That's why the bitting's so difficult. 2 I just nudged. Got a click out of that. 3-0. 4-0. 5-0. Coming back out again, got a little click out of 4, little click out of 3, 2 feels set, 1 feels set. Okay, I think we are fairly close to a false set here, folks. That's when it's going to get interesting. So 1 set, 2 set, 3 set, 4 set, 5 set. Okay, so presumably we just need to set the alpha pin now. Yeah, okay, click, get in there. It's a tough one, this one. Click, okay, and you saw the turn. Alright, so we have now got all the outer pins and the alpha elements set. Now this is where it gets funky, folks, because if we use standard picking techniques, what's going to happen now is that we are going to hit a dead end. We're going to hit a brick wall and we're going to go round and round in circles. So I'm now on the inners. 1. Moved a tiny bit and then stopped. Bad sign, means I can't set it. 2. Nothing on 2. 3, springy. 4, springy. 5, springy. Okay, so at this point, with this pick, on this lock, with this bitting, I am now stuffed. I'm at an impasse. Right, here's what we're going to do, folks. I'm calling this the Maynard Overlift. What we are going to do, we are going to break every single rule in the goddamn book. We are going to overlift the inner and outer at the same time. Now this is the thing that you never ever want to do when you're picking a multi-lock, because when you do it you overset everything and you have to go back to the beginning. What we're going to try and do here is overset the pin that we're working on. In this case I think it'll be pin 1, which are going to try and overset the inner and the outer without oversetting everything else, and then we're going to let everything drop back down again. Okay, and if we are really lucky, it works about 1 time in 3, that pin will then be set, both inner and outer, and we can move on to the next one. So let's do this nice and carefully. Okay, I'm on 1, I'm backing off the tension now, and I'm going to manually counter rotate this with my pick. You heard me drop something there. It's going to free up at some point. Here we go. Okay, right. Now, right at the moment, the inner and the outer on 1 are both overset. Now, I'm going to lift them a little bit further. All right. Now I'm going to let off the tension very slightly, and God willing, they are both going to drop down to the shear line and now both be set. Awesome. Okay, you saw that little turn. Right, now we can deal with 2. And surprise, surprise, it's doing exactly the same thing. I move it up, the inner up a little, it stops rock solid. And at this point we are stuck, we can't go any further. But again, we're going to overlift it. Backing off the tension, waiting for the pin to break. It's a tough one, this one. There it is, it just went light on me. Okay. Those two, the inner and outer in pin stack number 2 are now overset. I didn't hear anything else drop. Now I'm going to let that tension off again. Okay, we've got another little turn. I think we are now good to go. That was 3. Okay, 1 needs to go again. I dropped 1 in the process, so we're going to do it over again with 1. Backing off the tension. Okay, you heard that click, that's everything oversetting. We're now well and truly overset on 1, nothing else dropped. Going to back off the tension again, hope that it drops back to the shear line. Boom, okay. Yep, we're now set there. We are probably 2 pins away from an open, I should think. All we got to do is find them. Okay, 1 feels good. 2 feels good. 3 feels good. 4 feels good. Well, it's got to be 5 then, doesn't it? Yeah, and it is. There we go. Okay, we're open. Right, we just opened an impossible lock with that pick there. We did something that we weren't physically able to do, folks. What we did was we used the Maynard Overlift. So, just to recap, I know this has been a long video, but you needed the theory before you could see the practice, all right? We got into our false set when we had all the outers picked. We ran into a problem with the bitting where we could not physically, with the tool that we had, get up inside a low set outer to set an inner that was sitting 0.4 mil up inside it. We broke all the rules by oversetting both the inner and the outer. We then dropped back on the tension, let it drop back to the shear line, and if we were lucky, and in this instance we did it 3 times and it worked perfectly all 3 times, then we get the open. If not, you iterate it round again. There you go, folks. My name's Michael Maynard. This is Gorilla Picking. That was the Maynard Overlift. I'd love to know what you think. Thanks for watching, fellas.